Candidates up here, and I told them, but want to reiterate, these are really challenging times that we live in. Things are changing. The schools and the school board has to deal with things that, 10 years ago we never thought we'd be dealing with. But so we really appreciate folks that would come out, be a candidate. Campaigning is not easy, and putting yourself out there to be a candidate and then to serve is also something that is very important to our country and to our district. So thank you all very much for what you're doing, and we greatly appreciate that. So we're going to go in the order that the candidates will appear on the ballot. And so if you all will just take a moment and introduce yourselves and state how you being elected will improve the Board of Education. We'll take about 2 minutes per question on some of this. So Blaine, do you want to start on that?
Absolutely. Number one, thank you for hosting this. The Candidate Forum is always something that I look forward to because I believe, you have to be very open, you have to be very honest. One thing that I'm going to do, because this always wins me votes, is I'm going to introduce my wife. She's right over there in the corner because more people like her than they like me. So, as you can tell, that's how it goes. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I understand. How would it improve the board? Well, I'm already on the board. I've served the board a 3-year term a few years ago, and I took over for Mr. Bross, I believe, in a special runoff. So consistency is very important, but number one, I know the city of Hannibal. I know what our voters want. I know what our community wants, and I am willing to listen to people, and you have to. You have to listen to everybody, even people that you're not going to agree with. But it is vital that we have an open and honest conversation because, guys, we're living in times that I never thought I would ever see. And I saw a lot. I was a principal for 18 years. And you can't imagine the things that I saw as a principal. I never thought I would get to see some of the things that I'm seeing today, even in our schools, in our government, in our country. But it's the world we live in. So just to kind of wrap things up, as far as me, I'm very fiscally conservative. I'm very open-minded. I will talk to anybody. I love our education. I love our education system. I love our students. I see a lot of ex-teachers and current teachers here. So April 4th, I would love your vote. Afterward, I'll hang around. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Thank you, Blaine.
So my name is Jeff Evans, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you folks tonight. They told me I had about 1 minute, and I'm not very good at talking short, so I kind of condensed it on a piece of paper. I'll help read a little bit. So the fabric of a community is composed of the interwoven lives of its citizens, and no more important investment in the integrity of that fabric exists than that made during the formative years of youth. As a Hannibal family physician of 25 years and a father of 5 who all attend or have attended our district, and foster parent to several more, I've had opportunities to interact extensively with many of our local schools, as well as people from all walks of life. Both of my parents and one of my daughters were teachers. I believe in the family as the basic social unit of society and desire a school district that will maintain a clear respect for parents' authority. I favor recruiting and retaining excellent teachers, support staff, and administrators of great character and supporting them well. Discipline is important, and developing more effective policies and methods of engaging the small minority of students who make life rough for teachers and learning difficult for peers is probably overdue. I agree with Martin Luther King Jr. when he said, people should be judged for the content of their character, not the color of their skin. I favor public education, not indoctrination. In short, I want to be part of creating a better, more responsive educational system for all of the kids, parents, families, and staff in our district. So if that sounds good to you, you can put a vote in for me on the floor.
Thank you.
I'm LaDonna Hampton, and I know a lot of you don't know me, but then there's a few of you that do. But I have been a teacher for 11 years in the past, and I've taught in the public schools. And when we moved out here 9 years ago, I started working in the mental health field. And by that, I go in and I'm a community sports specialist. So what I do is I go into the homes of the parents, and I go into the schools with the kids. And so I see both sides of it. I've been on both sides. I understand what it is to be a teacher. I know what it is to be bitten by students who are out of control and you know, the discipline problems that we are dealing with that continue to get worse. I don't know if you've seen the incident over in Florida where the teacher, she was a little skinny thing, and she had taken some technology away from a student. And here comes this 276-pound student, threw her to the ground and just started kicking her and punching her. Those are things that need to stop. But anyway, my husband's over there, by the way, I forgot to, and we've been married for 34 years. We're pastors also here in this community at the First Assembly. And I have 2 daughters, and they're grown, and one lives in North Dakota. The other one's fixing to move to Australia within the next year, get married and stuff. So anyway, my heart breaks when I go into the homes and I see the families that are broken, and I want to see that change. There's a lot of good families out there that want to work with the schools, that they want to see their kids act right, and when they do get in trouble, but a lot of times there's lack of communication. And I've experienced that myself. Won't get calls back where they just never call us. And there's a problem with a lot of mental health today. We have a huge mental health problem in our community, and not just here, all over the world. And it's getting worse. And so we really need to address those things in our schools. And I feel like sometimes that we are not really looking at those things. And I feel like that's what we need to really focus on at this time.
My name's Stacy Graves. I know a lot of you, and I've had a lot of your kids in school. I've been here a long time. I've taught 39 years, 31 of those years here in Hannibal, and I was fortunate to be a cog in that wheel of our educators. We had some great, great teachers and still have great teachers. I think I'm in tune with the needs of our kids, and our kids we have great kids here. Yeah, we have some kids with problems, but we have great kids here. And if you look at their list of accomplishments this past years and years in the past, they're wonderful. And they are up against major challenges. You know, the youth, what they encounter now is way beyond what you and I did when we were, well, some of our older people here encountered when we were in school, and the younger people with kids in the school right now. There's no comparison. And so the need is there. But I think I'm a good listener. I want to do the very, very best I can for our kids, our teachers, our support staff, and our community. And we need to remember that our kids are a reflection of our community. Microcosm-wise, the big picture-wise, they're a really strong reflection of that. And that's how we need to address everything.
Well, hello everyone. My name's Anna Lemon. And growing up as a child, my mom every single morning would tell me to live my life as Christ-like as possible. And that's stuck with me through my whole life. I'm definitely not perfect at it, but it's taught me to grow every single day and to learn every single day to be a better person. And so, with that foundation that I've had from my mother, has given me the opportunity to give. The opportunity to give my talents and my passion to help others and to serve our community. So how many here tonight have children in the district? You can raise your hand if you have children that are in the district, or how many of you have had children in the district and they graduated, and maybe you even have grandchildren now in the district? Yes. So I'm a mother of 5. 4 of my children have graduated, and we currently have 1 that's a sophomore. And so, as a parent, just like all of you, I have one of the most qualifying attributes to be a board member. So let me share a little bit about my family and my children. We have a very wide range of children, where we have some very intelligent children. All of our children are intelligent, but they really excel at academics. And we had some behavior issues with our children. We had disabilities, we had IEPs, we were at the top of the class, middle of the class, below middle of the class. You know, having that wide range of experiences with my children, I really had the opportunity to address the issues, and I want other parents to be able to turn to somebody like me as a parent that have experienced the same issues, and that they know they have somebody that's going to listen to them, that they can come to, and that's going to advocate for them. And so as a parent, my parental roles that I've experienced with my own children, I'll be able to use that to help other parents in our community have somebody that they can count on and come to.
Well, yeah, we'll start with Jeff on this one. Would you take a few minutes, or just a look quickly, define and differentiate between the roles of the superintendent and being a board member?
The board members are elected, the superintendent is selected usually by the board members, and the board members are responsible for crafting vision and policy, and for shaping the general directions, and also for overseeing the implementation of the policies that they craft. The superintendent is sort of the CEO or unelected official that's responsible for sort of being the face of the school system and for managing the people that are subordinates to the superintendent. And a lot of the nuts and bolts and the inner workings of the school system really fall under the superintendent's direct supervision and also assistance. The board's role is a little different in that they are responsible for those things, but they mainly engage through the superintendent, not solely though. And so, you know, one of the issues that has arisen in a lot of boards in the area is they tend to probably rely too much on feedback just from one person, and they don't wind up seeking opinions outside of that one person's view. And so it's difficult. I was on a board one time and I said, listen, this board is a mushroom board. And they said, what do you mean by that? I said, we're fed crap and kept in the dark. And so you don't want a board like that on the school system. You want one that's going to be engaged enough and have some other points of contact in the district to be able to figure those things out on the ground as they actually happen, and then be able to assess the performance of the superintendent and the other facets of the school system that they're tasked with.
Okay, thank you. LaDonna, you want to add something?
Well, I do agree with him on that, except I think that we need to remember that the taxpayers and the parents are the ones who own the children, and they are the stakeholders of, and we're there to support what the parents want. So how do we know what the parents want? So my recommendation is like what we do at work. You know, when the top wants to know what's going on down at the bottom, they send us out surveys and what we want, and if we like what's going on, you can send those surveys into all the parents and let them have a voice in what is going on. And I think we should go with what the majority of Hannibal wants. You know, it shouldn't be all about what the school wants. I'm not saying that we ignore that. There are teachers who has kids also, and I'm sure there are things that they don't necessarily want to teach because maybe they have a conscience, or maybe they feel uncomfortable that that is not what they've been called to do, you know, they want to teach the basics and stuff. So we need to work as a team, but at the same time, we do remember that we are there to represent the parents.
Thank you. Stacy? You wanna
I think the
address more?
superintendent has a huge job. They've got to interpret their feedback from the community. They've got to see the needs before they're realized by anyone else. It's a very, very tough job. And the board, who selects the superintendent, the superintendent gives them a lot of information. And I think in the past we've done an excellent job of doing that. You know, it's not about this agenda, that agenda, it's about the big picture. And that big picture is fiscal, it's needs, it's what's right and wrong, it's all those things. What is the best educational pathway for our kids to make them successful in life? And so the superintendent's job is to provide all this information for the school board to act on or not act on. And I mean, we've sat through a lot of these meetings and it's a tough job. It's a very tough job. But basically speaking, your superintendent sees the needs, tries to address all those needs, is the go-between between the community. Not to say that the school board members should not be open at all times to any input from the community. And so it's like a shared pathway of making decision making. I think that's very important.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the board's position is to create policy, and then to oversee that that policy is being implemented through our superintendent. The superintendent's job is then to make sure that the administration is then implementing those policies. I feel that there should be a very good relationship between all administration and the superintendents, as well as the board. And communication is very important. And even when you think that it's trivial and doesn't need to be brought up at a board meeting, I feel like any and all information should be brought up. And so I think it's important for our superintendent to relay that message back to the board so that the board is aware of what's going on. I think that the board is an important role for getting out and asking, you know, what people's thoughts are before voting. And so when we're looking at the board packet prior to going into the meeting, I mean, it's can be pretty clear as to what you're going to be voting on. And so by making that public so that you do get the feedback from teachers, staff, if it's going to affect them, as well as the parents, so that you can have some input and have that discussion. For the last 2 years, I've been attending board meetings very regularly. I believe I've missed 2 in the last 2 years. And so I think that discussion is very important. A lot of times we can sit there and there's not a lot of discussion, which sometimes there just isn't. But I think that it's important for us to have communication.
Thank you. Emily?
I believe you asked what the relationship was, the superintendent and the board. Is that correct?
The difference between the roles.
The role is very simple. And Dr. Johnson just walked in. I saw her walk through the door, so happy to have you here. And her and I have had this conversation. The Board of Education is her boss. She will make recommendations to the board, and she has done that in a great manner. She will make recommendations about different policies. She will take the temperature of the community. She will look at quite a few different things. But when it comes down to it, we are elected officials, and when we look at her recommendations you have the power to ask questions and have great communication with her, but those recommendations can be followed. Or if it's our responsibility to think that, hey, our community doesn't want this, then it may be something that we need to have another conversation on. And I believe Dr. Johnson would agree with that. Excuse me. I don't think that's over the line. As a matter of fact, I think that's something that we talk about all the time. She has 7 bosses, and that's pretty tough. I only have one. She said over in the corner. So.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So for this question, it has 2 parts. The first question is, what are the 1 or 2 primary drivers of strong student achievement? And then the second part of that question is, what policies does the board need to implement to improve overall student achievement level? Donna, you want to take that one?
Well, yeah, there was something I wanted to.
Yeah. And we'll try and keep these to about 2 minutes each.
First of all, I wanted to define equity because I noticed that the state has really been pushing equity. And the definition of equity sounds good. Educational equity means that each child receives what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential. But what has happened since they have pushed equity in the schools? Has your child's academic potential increased, or has their social potential increased? Also, what has been pushed with equity? Equity has it's no different than diversity, CRT, social emotional learning. They all produce division among persons, race, cultural divisions, divides, economic divides, and other social factors that we are now seeing come forward as dividing people by the sexes to open the door to sexualizing and grooming of our children. And I know this because I work with this in the kids. I've had kids that have been sexually molested and stuff like that. And I've had to deal with these things. I go to court with the kids. I do all these things. I try to restructure and build the families that are broken.
Donna, so the first part of the question was, what are the 1 or 2 drivers of student performance? So can you focus on that?
Okay. First of all, what are you asking on that? When you mean
Well,
the unity,
what drives strong student achievement?
Well, I think that equity hasn't brought us there because we're focusing on the social emotional. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And all this other stuff.
But what
There's what's put us behind. We're not focusing on the academics. And I think that we have brought in all this other stuff, and we're not really focused on putting forth academics. And if you look at the state of Missouri, although Oakwood came first, I think it was last year, think about it, it was out of 30 states. We're 30th. So that's not a huge accomplishment. If you think about it, we're not first. We're not the first state. So we're way behind, and we've got a long ways to go. And that's because we're pushing all these other things, and we're not focusing on the issues of academics. And I think it's creating more problems, and it's causing more behavioral issues in our schools as well. Divided we fall, okay? If we want our schools to win, and we want to win-win, then we've got to focus on the real issues.
So
And
focusing on academics would be the
Yes.
answer to
And yes.
what you're saying. Thank you.
I'll have to ask what the second part was here in a second. Drivers for achievement, academic achievement of our students. I think we have to teach up. I think we have to have high expectations for our kids. I don't think you can get around that. I don't think you can sugarcoat that. Yes, when you have children with special needs, those needs need to be addressed. But when you have kids that are academic standouts, you need to teach up and have high expectations. And it's important for the parents to have high expectations for their kids. I mean, I tell kids this all the time, back in the day, you know, your friends are your friends. But when all push comes to shove, it's your parents that are somebody who's always going to be there for you, whether you want to believe that or not. And so I think parents, they're listening to you more than you think. And I think we have to have excellent teachers that set the bar high, But I think we have to compensate those teachers, and we have to have great support staff. It's a team. It's a big cog in a wheel. Excellence in education doesn't start halfway up the bar. It's all the way. What was the second part of that question?
What policies does the board need to implement to improve overall student achievement?
I think this COVID thing was just a mess. And I think we're on the right track trying to push. But I think coming out of COVID, and I don't know if this is answering the question or not, it takes about 3 years, once you're out of a situation like that, to see where if your programs you have in place are coming to fruition. And I think we need to be patient and try to be as aggressive as we can of getting our kids caught up. And did that answer your question at all?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you focused, what I got from that, what y'all reiterated, was that the student achievement needs parental involvement and in order to support that. And so the second part is, and great teachers. And so,
And great support staff. Just saying about it.
The second part is, how do we really do that? All those pies are on there.
All right, so to answer the first question, one or two things that drive strong student achievement. First and foremost, I think that teacher and parent relationship is going to be very important with the success of the student. And so I know that with our 5 children, we've had great relationships with our teachers, and when our kids were in school, and now with our last one in school. I think that's really important. And another driving factor is discipline. I think discipline is very important, and I think it's not easy for teachers and administration to discipline. And sometimes it just takes that one change where it's like, nope, sorry, there's no exceptions. This is what's going to happen, and this is how we're going to move forward. And once you set that expectation that discipline is going to happen, kids tend to listen. They tend to start showing respect, and they start listening and actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We found that out by just parenting. So overall policy changes. I think we already have policies in place as far as our academics and our curriculum. So I think just looking at that and really diving into our curriculum and making sure that what's being taught in the classroom as far as the basics of reading, English, math, science. We're really focusing and staying connected with why are we sending our children to school? To be educated. So we need to look at our policy that we currently have, because it's there, it's in place. So I don't think anything needs to be new, but we just need to look at what we already have and dissect that and make sure that we're following our policy.
Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you. It's very simple as to what drives achievement. If you look at studies and you look at all of the things that have been put out there, parents, number one. Parents are the most important part of the educational system for a child. Number two is the teacher themselves. The teacher in that classroom, what they're studying, their expectations, all of those things. Then you have administrators, and no offense, Mrs. Johnson, but really last comes the superintendents and central office. Really, that's how it is. And if you look at it, you go Google it tonight, that's what you're going to see. And I totally disagree that we can't discipline kids. I'm going to tell you that right now. As a principal, you're supported at the central office level. You know what? If there's a kid that comes to school and he has drugs 2 times and he's affecting 3,000 other kids, he needs to be out of that school. He needs to be out of that district. He needs to be somewhere where he can learn and give him the chance. We don't want to throw him away, but we have 3,000 other kids that we have to worry about. When I start looking at those things and those possibilities and those scenarios that come up, it infuriates me. that we take a look at the one kid who's bringing drugs to school or giving drugs to somebody else, and we focus all of our attention on them, and then we have 3,125 other students that we say nothing about. Well, what's going to happen when, now that we have the legalization of marijuana, what's going to happen when they go to Coco and they have a, I don't care what it is, if it's a brownie, if it's a biscuit, if it's a cookie, and they put it on your kid's plate and they eat it? They don't even know what they're eating? What should we do to that kid? You think that kid should stay in our school district? You think he should affect our other 3,000 kids in our school district? No. So it's a simple answer. Number one, parents affect the ability of kids to learn. They have to be there. Number two, the teachers have to be supported, have to have great curriculum. We have to make sure we have attendance policies that hold parents accountable. We have to have high expectations, and we need to make sure that we discipline our kids, and the kids that are distractions and the kids that are holding other kids back, they need to have another place, wherever that may be, that they can learn.
Jeff, you want to finish this out?
Wrapping it up. Okay. Yeah, I agree with a lot of the sentiments about discipline and about the importance of parental involvement too. But when you think about motivations for high academic achievement, I think it has a lot to do with the same motivations that you and I might have for achievement. And that is, you've got to believe you can do it. And you also got to believe it makes a difference. All right? So, the first part of that, you got to believe you can do it. There's a lot of kids that really don't believe they can do it. And doing it, and what it is, varies, because this is a big district we have. Hannibal's a big district. And so you have more kids than some of these little smaller schools at each extreme of ability and situation. So you have some kids, and it's not the same as other kids in it. And you have a pretty good number of kids that really aren't motivated to engage at all because they don't think it makes a bit of difference. And so the way to craft policies, I think, is probably to try to figure out a little bit how we can cater to each end of that spectrum and try to find something that means something to the kids. Sometimes we've been focusing on discipline and punishment, but a lot of times the kids, you can punish them a lot, but they've got to have some reason why they want to participate in this whole process. You can have policies that wind up having expectations for them, but if they don't see that they don't believe they can do it, they can't see that it makes any difference, then it's just not going to matter to them. So, I like to see vocational education. Maybe we can identify some kids earlier on before they have a chance to disrupt so many classes in middle school from being disengaged and disrupted, and start developing and cultivating that. I'm glad that the school district's buying the Sutherland's building, because I think that is the wave of the future, to get some kids, you identify them earlier, maybe even middle school age, where they're wreaking havoc in the classroom. So, man, what matters to you? What dreams do you have for your life? How can we help you to achieve those things, and then put them in engagement in that early on, so that by the time they get out of high school at the end of the 12th grade year, they have some marketable skills. And then the other thing is, man, this makes a difference. You don't have to be living the same kind of life you've seen some other people around you living maybe for the last 4 generations. And you can wind up making a difference and having a different kind of life and a different outcome. It's not impossible. And so just finding some ways to motivate them and encourage them along the way, I think is going to be the way to do that. And some kids, you'd have trouble. You'd have to tie lead balloons on them to keep them from succeeding and achieving, because they're just wired that way. And other kids, they just got no interest in it at all. And so finding a way to craft a public education system that meets the needs of those extremes, plus the ones in the middle, is the challenge, I think, with policy.
So we talked a lot about the parental involvement. So this question goes to, what policy should the district have regarding parental access of all student educational materials? Stacey, you want to kick that one off?
When you're raising a child and when you're educating a child, it takes a village. But I think there has to be some trust. I'm not saying, put the information out if the parents want to see what academics their child is partaking in. But teachers are professionals. You're going to have to trust the teachers a little bit, and the administration. We have curriculum managers in place that do such a great job. Personally, I feel like we test too much. That's out of our control. It's at the state's bidding. But I think parents need to know what's going on with the education of their child. Is that child going to be successful as an adult? Are they going to be able to seek a higher education if they want to? Are they going to realize their dreams? But as far as the academics, yes, they should probably be accessible by the public and parents. But I don't think parents, I think parents should think long and hard before they start sticking their fingers in controlling the academics. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Anna?
Okay, so the parental access to curriculum. We live in a digital world, and so it's so easy to put what's going on in the classroom online. We just got a new website, and it looks great. And so we have access, digital access. It makes it easy for teachers, administration, the buildings, the superintendent, everything that we're teaching our children, the lesson plans, all of that, it can be easily uploaded. And living in a digital world, it makes it easy access for parents to know and understand what is going on in the classroom. I know when our older children were in the classroom, we knew what they were being taught. I mean, we had textbooks; those are long gone. But we had the information. It was made available to us. I mean, we had to go and ask for it and get it, but it was made available. And so now that we live in this digital world, it just makes it so much easier for us to put that information out there so parents do have access to it. Because we do have a lot of parents that are concerned about what's being taught, and I think it's important for them to have that information. And so by putting it out there, I think it's a good idea for our parents.
I want to make sure I understand the question. You're asking what a parent should be able to know what is being taught in the classroom?
Yes.
Everything. I mean, parents should absolutely know what. When I was a teacher, parents could come in and ask me any question. They could look at my curriculum. They could look at my homework assignments. Why would you not want a parent to not know what their kid is being taught?
Well, there are some districts and states that are doing that. So.
There's not districts here that are doing that.
That's right.
Our district is not doing that. I'll tell you who else needs to know what is being taught in the classroom, and that's the Board of Education. The Board of Education needs to know what's being taught in the classroom. You know, I'm going to tell a story. This is funny because a long time ago, and my mother was a saint and I loved her. She died 12 years ago. But she bought me a book. And I love baseball. I loved it. She bought me a book about baseball. And I started reading that book, and I was probably 12. And that book had a sexual scene in it that I took it to my mom. And she gave it to me. And I said, Mom, would you read this? Because I really don't know what it means. And she read that and she said, oh my gosh, Mom, give me the book. And she took it back to the store and said, I can't believe you sold me this for my 12-year-old. Why would we as a district want to hide anything that a parent would want to know what is being taught in their classroom? I don't think there's a teacher in here or a teacher in our district or a superintendent in our district or a person in our district that would want to cover up anything that is being taught. I just don't believe that.
Yeah, So I favor total transparency on the curriculum for the parents. As a parent, you know, a lot of times I'm partnering with the kid to help do their homework or at least see what's going on there. So we've got to have access to what's being taught, and that ought to be 100% access. You know, this question really is rooted in the idea of parental rights, and there have been some districts that have had places in other places, mostly coastal, that have really tried to usurp parent authority, particularly in the area of transgender and LGBT stuff. And so, you know, I think that the trust in some ways has been a little bit squandered on the part of some districts. I'm not saying Hannibal's done that as much with curriculum, but I favor parental involvement and access and knowledge even beyond curriculum. You know, a lot of the issues that have arisen over the course of the last 25 years I've been interacting with the Hannibal School District as a part of a parent have really not been curriculum-based, but they've been more behavioral-based, conversational-based. You know, and I think the parents ought to know what's going on, you know, not just curriculum alone, but also the things that are not necessarily included in a syllabus. You know, you got coaches dropping the F-bomb routinely on the football fields and in the rooms. You got, you know, things that are happening in, you know, health classes, you know, where, you know, recent conversation about, you know, consent for sex. You know, teacher was talking about consent for sex and say, hey, you don't have to have consent if you ask me for sex, you know, to the class of 9th graders. You know, I mean, just stuff like that happens once in a while. I've had people bashing Christianity to my children on occasion in this district. I've had a lot of things I could bring up that are kind of unseemly in this kind of forum. But so I favor parental access for everything, not just curriculum, but also behaviorally and in the other issues and the things that make up the milieu of the stew that goes along to make up the school system. You have to have teachers and people that have access to our kids that have absolutely the highest moral character. And so there have been some issues that have been overlooked in the district and not dealt with forthrightly. That shouldn't happen in this district. It should be dealt with straight on, treat everybody the same, and take care of business. Even if they're connected, even if they're your friends or your family in the district, it needs to be handled and dealt with. Because the people that we want around our kids are people we want to have a high moral character, because they're role models, believe it or not. And we need to make a neutral playing field for people with varying beliefs in the school district. But we don't need to be indoctrinating the kids, you know, in a soft way even, by bashing people. There's been a lot of political conversations that, you know, I can tell you guys about that happen, especially in election seasons. There's a lot of issues involving transgenderism and LGBTQ issues that, you know, I have had them come back. You know, I have a kid who's an IEP from one of the schools that came back, you know, asking whether or not he was a boy or girl, you know, recently, after some conversations in gym class, you know. So those kind of issues come up a lot. They're not curriculum based, but they are environmental based, and I think the parents need access to all that.
I believe in total transparency to the parents on all issues, especially all of the curriculum. I think it actually can be put online. In fact, I think they're passing some Senate bills right now that is going to do that. And some good news is that they are not going to, in the Senate bill that they're trying to pass right now, none of this indoctrination and stuff of the homosexuality and all the other stuff, the CRT and all that, that's going to be left to mental health. And that's coming down through the Senate right now. So I'm all for that, that it would be not in the school, and it would be every individual parent's right to choose what they want for their child. If they feel like their child is having some issues, I'm not against those people. I love those people. They need help, you know, and stuff. And so I want to see them to get the help. I don't mind working with LGBTQ or anybody else. And I told my boss even, you know, we were just talking about this, but they usually don't put them on my caseload because I am a Christian and I don't have this place. But I just told them that, listen, I can love them and treat them with respect just like anybody else. But you know, if you put them on my caseload, I'm going to tell them that God doesn't make junk. He made you perfect, and He made you who you are and stuff. And so that's just my personal belief. But I'm not going to force anything on them, and I would respect their rights. And I would do that in anything. But I really believe that this should come down to a parent issue, not, it should be up to the schools to be telling our children how to think. Our children should be able to, we need to start letting our children start to think for themselves instead of telling them, you need to think like this. You know, we used to teach when we grew up, you know, how to think. You know, what are your thoughts on this? Instead of, like whenever you go sign up on YouTube even, a man signed up as a 9-year-old just to check to, see what was going on. Well, the first things they start showing you is things about gay and lesbian and all these stuff. That's called indoctrination. So when we bring all this stuff into the schools, whether it be that or CRT, where it teaches people to hate one another and stuff, then we got problems and stuff. Those are mental health issues, and we need to leave that to the parents to teach whatever they want, because kids don't grow up hating one another. They do not grow up being like, I never even thought of sex or anything until like I was about 17. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't like that. And you know why? It's because we didn't have phones, and we didn't have technology telling us all about this, and we didn't have people shaking their little booties and doing all these things. There's things were different back then. And so today we see a different type of things going on. And so if you play something over and over again, or you're taught it from the news stations, or you're taught it from wherever, you're going to believe those things. And I just think that should be coming from the parents. That shouldn't be coming from the schools. And we need to post the curriculum for what it is. Thank you. Sorry.
So what obligation does the board have in curriculum decisions, courses, text, technology? And how will the board know if the approved curriculum is being effective?
So I think the board's role is to look at the curriculum that's presented, that the district, or that the teachers, that the administration has set forth. I believe that our superintendent presents it to the school board, and the school board is to review it and to approve the curriculum. And I think that it's important that every year that this is addressed, that we look at what changes were made from last year. Why are we making this change? I think currently a lot of our curriculum is there, but I don't know if it's reviewed every year with the board and is brought to the board's attention. I know that they have the CSIP plan, our improvement plan that's presented to the board. That was just recently presented, and we're on target. We're checking all the boxes as far as like making all the improvements that we've set forth. But as far as like the board's role at curriculum, I just personally believe that the board should be looking at it every year. Was there a second part, or?
No, well, how do you know it's effective? You answered it. Oh, okay.
We get updates constantly from Sean Brown and assistant superintendents that are in charge of curriculum. The board needs to understand the curriculum. They need to know the curriculum, because we are the leaders of that school district, and we need to make sure that we understand what our kids are being taught. We need to understand what's going on within the school system. We need to understand what's going on within the classroom. So, you rely on people to do that, but what I would like to see also is our right now it's Sean Brown, but our assistant superintendent in charge of curriculum give us updates 3 times a year, can be even quarterly, on what is going on with each and every grade level. We get a lot of information from our principals and our directors. They come and they present all the time about their curriculums and what's going on within their schools. So if a board member doesn't understand what their curriculum is, it's because they choose not to. It's because they're passive in their job, and you can't be passive in this job.
I I think according to state statutes, the board's required to approve the curriculum that the school district's using annually. And so because it's such a large school district and there's so many varied curriculums and different ages, you really have to break that up into smaller pieces of work and get other people involved in reviewing that, because the people that are on the board, 7 of them, aren't going to spend time probably going through every little detail and every little line on the curriculum that's offered. So you have to depend on some other people, whether that's in the district itself or whether you wind up getting some committees together to review the curriculum and then report back to the board. I think that's something that's going to be sort of sorted out. I'm not aware particularly, other than reports from the administration about the curriculum, that there's any sort of process in place to review and monitor that on an ongoing basis. How do you assess whether or not it's achieving its goals? Well, that's what the standardized testing is for, and some of the other things that we use to assess performance and to measure the district here against other school districts in the state and out of the state. So I think that's important, just because it gives you a barometer of whether you're losing or gaining ground. You know, some people say, well, the district's doing this well, they're not doing this. But you've got to ratio that, look at other similar districts, and you've also got to wind up looking at percentile ranking over time to see if you're gaining or losing ground. Looking back over time, there were rankings that we probably were higher in some years back than we are at the present time. A while back, we used to pay for all the kids, I think the district did at a certain grade level, 11th grade, I think, to take the ACT. And I think that's got to be funded by the parents now, if I recall. I don't think you guys pay for the ACT anymore. Susan, do we still cover that as an expense? Do we pay for ACT for 11th graders?
That was covered by the state for kids, and now it is for the 1 grade.
Just for 11, so they're covered.
It
Okay.
used to be 21.
Oh, okay. So finding ways to compare apples to apples across the district is a good way to assess the curriculum.
Well, I'm just looking at, all right. Okay, I don't have all the answers when it comes to this, but I will say that what they're saying is true, that we do have to come from, I was just going over a course on this, and we do have to go by state standards if we're going to receive the funding, that is, and stuff. But we have to decide also, how do we want our children to be raised and stuff, and so there's some funding we may not be able to accept if it's going to indoctrinate our children and stuff, and we need to think what's best for our kids and stuff. I know that there are places like Hillsdale College and stuff who offer free curriculum, and they're one of the best in the country and well known for having high quality education and stuff. But I do think that we need to include parents in making any decisions, and make sure that when we send out surveys to people, I really think that's important to include the parents in these decisions and stuff. Maybe put, a board of parents together that would work with the schools to get the approval of it.
So you want to wrap it up for us?
I want to repeat the question because I blew the last one.
No problem. What obligation does the board have in curriculum decisions, courses, text, technology use, etc.? And how will the board know if the approved curricula is being effective?
Well, I think there's a lot of safeguards. As Blaine said, they vote on and review curriculum. We have a curriculum director, Sean Brown, who does a wonderful job. And I think they try to keep it as fresh as possible as far as needs, as technology has progressed, what do we need to keep adding to make our kids competitive. But there's a lot of safeguards in place that actually test to see if they're getting out of the curriculum they're supposed to be getting. Through testing, the CSIP plan is pretty rigorous and really holds the district's hands to the fire as far as, you have to do this or else. And so that having been said, I think we do an outstanding job here really trying to keep our curriculum as competitive as possible for our kids.
All right, thanks. Blaine, do you want to take the next one? So how should the district best support the children, their families, teachers with the gender issue? And please include in your answer handling personal pronouns, bathroom issues, sports, and educational material. So this is a toughie.
Is it really a toughie?
Maybe.
I mean, it's a toughie for some people. It's not a toughie for me, because if you're talking about males in a female bathroom, that's not acceptable. If you're talking about males in female sports, that's not acceptable. You know what, I taught biology and I have a specialist in educational leadership, and when I was going through my biology and getting my biology degree, I remember them teaching me about male and female. I don't know about all this pronoun stuff. I think it's ridiculous in many cases. I will say this. I would not stand for somebody bullying a transgendered person, because that's bullying. We should not teach you can be a male or a female. We all know that that's not true. We should also be aware that if somebody is being harassed because of their thoughts or issues, is it any different than being harassed for your thoughts or issues? It is a bullying situation. So I don't know, you know, when we hear about all of this, these pronouns and all of this stuff, sometimes I get so sick of hearing that, I just turn off the TV and I listen to John Denver. You know, I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. There's male and a female, and I don't want Leah Thomas. You know, I read, if you go to, you'll hear, and I'm sure you've all read it, you saw it, and surely you've seen the swimmer that the little lady that was her NCAA championship was stolen because she tied with Leah Thomas, and she was in the locker room. And when you're in a swimming locker room, and I've never been in a swimming locker room, but he went into a swimming locker room and his male genitalia was out as they were getting into their swimsuits. That should tell you that she's swimming against a boy. And when they tie, I can't believe that they allowed him to walk out and gave her her medal or her trophy later. To me, that just makes no sense. I don't know. If you think it makes sense, that's up to you. To me, it makes no sense.
So I think everybody should be treated with respect, and you treat other people like you like to be treated, but I favor traditional views on these kinds of issues in schools. I don't think sex ought to be a big part of what's going on in the school. I don't think there should be clubs based on what kind of sex you like to have, you know, like gay, lesbian, teacher, student association, that kind of stuff. I don't favor transgender special privileges and things. I think people have to stick with their biologic sex, and the fad of the moment with this transgender stuff is probably crossed over some lines. You got to create policy that makes a neutral environment so people can access the public school. But yes, some places in California, in the middle school, where they've done surveys lately, where 40% of the 7th graders identify as either, you know, LGBTQ or transgender. A lot of these kids are very malleable, very vulnerable, and so there's a difference between accepting intolerance versus celebration. Bullying shouldn't be allowed in any school against anybody in the school district, but at the same time, you can't make special protected classes of people who wind up harboring these things, and elevate them and celebrate them to the point where you actually indoctrinate and induce kids into joining their ranks. Kids want attention, they want to be celebrated, they want people to like them, and they want to find something that'll wind up differentiating them, make them be included. And so when you make that a super inclusive type situation, when everybody celebrates it, it becomes like almost a victim class not to. Then you wind up inducing kids to join the ranks, even if that's not particularly their proclivity. And so you've got to be careful to strike a balance between those kinds of issues. I'm not in favor of furries, people who decide they're animals. Okay, that needs to be eradicated in the school district. Generally speaking, you say, okay, you can dress up as a cat when you go home, but those kind of things really didn't take a great deal of conversation back years ago. If you harbor a belief in violation of reality, that's called a delusion. And so we've been addressing those kinds of things for many years, but only recently have they become mainstream. And I favor creating environments where everybody can thrive in the district, but yet following common sense and also not making it something that induces kids into certain tendencies that they might not otherwise be induced into.
Well, Dr. Evans, you're a great speaker. That's all I can say. Because I agree with everything he said. He's just better at saying it than I said and saying a lot of stuff tonight. But I agree totally down that line. And I'm not in favor of supporting any person who, wants to do that. I don't believe in being mean. I believe that we should be kind and good to one another and respect one another. But I don't think we should enable those things. And I know that one of my clients, when I went to their house, the mom was real upset. She was telling me about her son. And I said, well, what's going on? And she said, well, in the school, and it was Hannibal, she said that they were telling him he had to, it was like enable these people who are transgender and different sexes in the curriculum. And he was showing me the curriculum. It was an online curriculum. And basically, it was encouraging them to support these lifestyles and that they had to write something on it, and it was a course that was required, and he didn't want to do it. He felt uncomfortable about it. And I told his mother, I said, well, maybe you should just go talk to the school about it. Now, I don't know if she ever did or anything. Her child wasn't on my caseload, but the mom was. And so I was working with her. And so there are those things happening in our schools, and that bothers me, and I'm there to support my parents that don't agree with those things, and I don't agree with those things either. I do think that there need to be separate bathrooms, and I think whenever you encourage that, I think it creates a mental health condition that worsens over time. And like he said, they do want to be celebrated. They're looking for to be noticed, and they'll do whatever it is to get noticed. And so when we enable those things, that's exactly what happens.
Tough topic. Don't you miss the days when we just went to school to learn? It's kind of nice, wasn't it? But my heart goes out to these kids, be they gay, be they transgender, whatever they are. Many of those kids are ostracized and treated badly at home. And I don't care what the proclivities of the child is. I'm not saying we should change the format for everybody else and make that into an issue when it doesn't have to be. What I am saying is every child, regardless of who they are, what they are, etc., should feel safe at school, if nowhere else. And that's where I stand on that. And we should nourish our kids, enrich our kids, and stop getting sidetracked so much from academics. But we have to have empathy for these kids of difference. They have to feel safe at school, because some of them are not feeling safe at home.
Okay. Some of the stuff I'll probably say echoes some of what everybody else has already said, but as far as the gender issues, the pronouns, I don't believe any of that is necessary at school. Boys should not be in girls' sports, girls should not be in boys' sports. And I think that, for example, with the wrestling, I think our district and many other districts around us, we now have girls wrestling, and I think that's great. The girls no longer have to wrestle with the boys. That competition has been eliminated, so the girls are wrestling girls. So I think that's good. But we do not need to have parents questioning whether or not their girl is going to be in the bathroom and there's going to be a boy that shows up. And so I think the safety of our biological sex of our children is important, and I also believe that the safety of all of our children is important. And so if we have children that are identifying as trans, then, and if they're bullied, as Blaine had mentioned, then the bullying needs to be issued or addressed, and that issue needs to be dealt with. As far as supporting parents that are having transgender identifying children, I think that we have some really good resources within our community. I don't think that our district is the place to deal with that. And I think it's important for our district then to support those parents and give them the resources, the outside entities, so that they can seek the confidence in others in those entities. And I also wanted to say that the majority of our children, our teenage students, studies are coming out now that 4 out of 5 children that are teenagers that are trans and that are transitioning into another sex and identifying, 4 out of 5 of them detransition after puberty. So the studies are there. So it seems to be kind of a wave that's happening within our society, and so it's a societal issue, and I don't think that there's really no place for it in our district.
Thank you. Jeff, you want to take the next one? For all of y'all, we were going to try and take this just to 8. I think we've had some really good responses and questions. So if you'll allow me, I think we'll go for a few more questions for a little bit. Sorry that it's going a little later than we had planned. Jeff, to start off, the board is currently discussing requiring all district staff to attend diversity, equity, and inclusion training. How should the board assess the psychological, emotional, and financial pros and cons of such potentially controversial and costly training?
I think the first step is to assess whether or not you really have a problem in Hannibal with racism. We have to deal with that in the field of medicine that I work in as well. And so I've been through about 6 or 8 of those in the last year and a half. And so when they were coming to our organization with that, I asked them a question. I said, which of the individuals in our organization is racist? Which of them aren't able to accept people of diverse backgrounds and skin colors? And they said, well, we really don't know anybody who's like that. And I said, well, okay, we need this training. So which one of our policies is racist and unfairly discriminates against people of color or in any of these categories? And they're like, well, we've been very careful to not make policies that are discriminatory in any way against any of these issues. And I say, so where is this coming from? Well, it's just embedded. So what do you mean, they said. Well, I said, well, which one of the policies or people are you trying to fix? And they didn't have an answer. They said, well, it's just embedded, in society. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? They said, well, all the white people tend to wind up being discriminatory based upon their systemic approach to people of color. And I said, let me get this straight. What's racism? And they said, well, it's painting people with a broad brush on the basis of their skin color. And I said, well, isn't that what you just did against the white people? And so to be honest with you, you've got to wind up taking a look at this and seeing if there really is an issue first. All right? Is there an issue of racism? If there is, I think you need to deal with it head on. But the DEI curriculum and material that's being pushed on a national level is very much embedded with I think his name's Abram Kendi and CRT and some of the other things that they've addressed. And the fundamental underpinnings of it is a frontal assault on American values, on the underpinnings of Martin Luther King's statement that people should be judged by the contour of their character and not the color of their skin. It's stepping back from all the progress of the race reforms of the 60s And I think it's absolutely toxic to communities to wind up embedding this into them. It leads to the conversations about reparations, it leads to a perpetual victim class, it leads to the tyranny of low expectations for people of color, because you think that they've got an excuse now to not succeed and not to engage. Because what's the point anyway? We're victimized, we're unable to wind up engaging these things. And so, you know, most of the DEI initiatives I've seen are rooted in CRT, I think are misguided, and they got no place really being introduced and force-fed to the people that are in the district, honestly. If there is an issue, or you wanted to include diversity training, I think you've got some great resources here in Hannibal. There are local resources. You've got guys like Joe Miller, Lonnie White, people that have been through actual discrimination back in the 60s that would be happy to come and have a forum about that and have a dialogue back and forth about what it means to be a person of color, what it means to be discriminated against, and how to guard against that, and also how to get inside the mindset of some of the people that are in those situations so that you can wind up engaging them and convincing them that they can do it and that it matters. And you get that kind of dialogue going with those people and getting into the minds of the kids, you can make a difference. I think force feeding the DEI stuff will wind up basically making, you know, the whites resentful, you know, the blacks not really advantaged anyway, and it's not going to accomplish the things you're hoping to accomplish in the district. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with your opinion. Actually, one of my kids, he came out of a classroom the other day and come in to see me, and he said, yeah, my teacher just told me that I was discriminated against and that I couldn't mount it up to be anything because I was black, you know. So it was just something that he had just watched or something, and I could hear in the next room it was about Martin Luther King, and I don't know if he misunderstood it or what and stuff. But Martin Luther King didn't want us judging by the color of our skin. He wanted us to judge by the character of a person, and I agree with that. But where kids do well is when they are encouraged to do well, and you have high expectations for them. I know that whenever I first started teaching back in, well, it's a long time ago, but anyway, the first 5 years of my teaching I did in Oak Brook, Illinois, which is a very wealthy area of the outskirts of Chicago, where there's CEOs and doctors and lawyers, and they thought because we had the last name Hampton that we owned the Hampton Inn, and we're like, nope, that's not us, and stuff. And so, like, the parents had very high expectations, and whatever expectation you have of your child, they're going to fall just below that, you know. And so they told their kids that not only will you make straight A's, but whenever you finish school, you're going to get a lawyer's degree. And if you want to do something after that, then that's great. You can do something after that, but you will get a lawyer's degree. And we know how they use that against us today. Well, then I go down and we move to in the middle of the reservation, and I taught in low middle class students. And the parents' expectations were much lower, and if kids made it through junior high, it was very lucky. You know, very few would graduate. So parents' expectations, teachers' expectations, all those things do matter, just like they were saying earlier. But this critical race theory and all these other things, they're not going to help our schools, and they do. I don't think that bringing this stuff in is going to help our schools. I think it's going to be causing more division, and kids are taught that they don't grow up. I have kids that play together of all different colors and stuff, and they don't have problems and stuff. It's whenever they're taught it that the problem becomes a real issue, you know. I have one family, and she's a black lady, and she's really sweet, and I love her very much, and she loves her grandchildren, but because she grew up during the time where there was a lot of racism, she has this thought ingrained in her that if her child gets into trouble, then everybody's going to think that he's a bad kid, and because he's black and all these things and stuff. And now he's got that thinking because he's told that over and over again. And so it creates, so if you continue to say those things to someone or to teach those things, then they automatically believe what you tell them. Just like a child will model behavior, what they see on the TV or everywhere else, you know. If they hear it at school and they want to be like whoever they hang around, you know, what you hang around is what you become.
We are a diverse community, and I think that we have to trust our school board and our superintendent to bring in people that will train and help make our faculty, staff, and support staff and administration more sensitive to the needs of people of different color, different ideologies, etc. I don't think the CRT or anything like that is going to be an issue. I think it's preventative in nature. You know, we've gone through some tough times this past year. The board has, the school has, and I think we need to trust them to bring in appropriate training for our staff, our support staff, and our administrators. And I think they'll do just that. But to say that we don't have a problem here, I think we're putting our head in the sand.
Okay. So first step is finding out what the issues are. So how do you find out the issues? You have meetings. You set up evenings where you give opportunity for families to come in and share their stories and share the issues that they would like to see addressed, whether it be race, diversity. Just in December, we had a meeting. It was called Sensitivity Awareness. So we had an incident and with an administrator, and so the board had called a meeting. It was a sensitivity awareness meeting where we had individuals be able to share their story and share their concerns that are happening to them, to their children. And so that was a great opportunity for the board and our superintendents to look at, okay, well, what are our issues? So we have these issues. And so number two, what do we do with those issues? Well, we elect a board to deal with those issues. They look at those issues, they address them, they find a solution, and then they implement that solution. And they move forward with making sure that these families feel safe, that they feel heard, and then we move forward. So since December, in the last couple of board meetings, we've had 4 options presented as far as diversity training. So other entities that would come into the district to implement their training, that's ranged from $10,000 to over $90,000. So personally, I don't feel that we need an outside entity to come in. I think that outside entities can be resourceful in finding, other options as far as like just looking at what they can provide and give resources for the board and for the training. But honestly, we have it all right here. We have all the resources that we need right here, and our issues are here in Hannibal. And so by having Hannibal resources to deal with our issues, I think that that's where we're going to find our solution.
We're here.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've had diversity training my whole life because I had a mother and father that didn't see color. I had black friends that stayed all night at my house. Hank Stamps, I love him to this day. Derwin Conley, who's in our society today, is a great man. Joe Miller, I love Joe Miller. We had an incident. It's not everybody knows that we had an incident in Hannibal where we had a principal that posted an image. Was that a difficult issue? It absolutely was a difficult issue. You know how I made up my mind? I I didn't listen to all of the outside garbage because there's a lot of outside garbage. There's a lot of people that want to start trouble on the outside. I went to Mr. Vincent Dawson, who's about a 6'5" man of color that's the custodian down there, and I asked him questions. I said, do you have a racism issue in your building? And if you don't know it, people, look to your secretaries and look to your custodians, because they know everything in the building. They know everything. And I pulled him into the principal's office, and I said, do you have a racism issue here? And he said, no, sir. I said, is your principal a racist? He said, no, sir. I said, what if I voted to dismiss her? He said, that'd be a mistake. I said, can you forgive her for what she did? He said, I already have. So if he can forgive her for putting that on social media and I can't, that's a problem. That's a problem. We need to identify issues if we have them. What did I say when I introduced myself? I said I'm a well, I'm not very physical. I'm round, I'm physical, I guess. Just told my wife I need to get in shape when I was coming here. But anyway, I'm a fiscal conservative. And when I saw $94,000, I about choked on diversity training. We have great people here in Hannibal. If we have a problem, there are people in Hannibal that can solve it. And you know who I have a tremendous amount of confidence in? Susan Johnson. I do. I do. I have a tremendous amount of confidence in her to make the right decision and to ask the board what she wanted. She got in trouble, not in trouble. She got criticized by somebody because she wanted to vet every person that was going to come into our district to speak. By God, she better vet every person that comes into our district to speak, because we don't want people coming into our district to cause problems. We don't want people coming into our district that have ideas that don't match our ideas. Do we have people of color that are racist? Yes. Do we have people that are white that are racist? Yes. It's not the color of your skin, it's what's in your heart and what's in your mind. That's exactly what it's all about.
Very good. LaDonna, you want to take this question? If elected, will you be able to stand alone on an issue if it's in opposition to the superintendent and the other board members? And please give an example of how you stood on your own and influenced people that had opposing opinions.
Okay, this actually just recently happened to me. I had to take a new caseworker out and train her in the community. And I went to a family's home who was telling me of some issues that they were dealing with the LGBTQ and some problems they were having, and they were wanting to know about, I provide resources and stuff for them. And so I was providing them the materials and letting them know what was going on. But this girl did not know my relationship with the family because she had not spent the time that I had with them and what they'd been asking of me to do. And so she went back and she reported me to my boss, who they brought me in, and they were telling me about what they heard and everything. But I had been really sick. About a month ago, I ended up with the super strep and the RSV all at once. And so I was down, and so I was at the end of it there and had just come back to work, and I still wasn't at my best. And I just kind of was staring at him, but the Lord was dealing with me about letting that go. And so I was just like, okay. So I went back and I emailed them over the weekend, both of my supervisors, and I told them, I said, you know, you don't put LGBTQ on my caseload because you know that we don't have the same beliefs. And I said, the people that I represent, they ask me questions and they want me to advocate for their rights. And that's my job, to resource them, to give them the help that they need, and to advocate for their rights. And so that's what I was doing that day. And I said, this isn't right for you guys to do that. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, if I was out there and I was going to see somebody LGBTQ, I would be advocating for their rights if that's what they wanted. But I wasn't out there doing that because that wasn't what I was called to do, and that wasn't what the people asked of me and stuff. And so I was advocating for them and giving them the resources that they requested of me. And I got in trouble for it, and I had to stand up for it, and they went from there and they took care of it, and all went well.
Mark Twain said, it's never wrong to do the right thing. And I firmly believe that. I was just racking my brain. I can't think of, when I was in college, I went to Northeast Missouri State, AKA Truman State, and they would not give female athletes letters at the time, or join the Letterman's Club. And so a black sprinter from St. Louis named Deb Carter and I said we'd have to petition. And Ralph Pink was a formidable opposition to women being in the Letterman's Club. And we beat the streets and got people's signatures and petitioned and did what we could do. And we had to have, 30 people at the next Letterman's meeting. Well, we had about 100, and there was only like 6 guys there. So we just kept attending the meetings, and it got passed that they had to let us into the thing. Was it very popular? No, it wasn't. But it was the time of Title IX, and it was something that needed to happen for us. We were working just as hard as the guys, and we felt like we had a right to be there.
So would I stand alone on an issue that I was passionate about and maybe was in opposition of our superintendent? Yes, the answer is yes. Actually, we've already had that issue in 2019. I wasn't on the board, but I was a parent that we had a graduation issue. But after all that was resolved, I called Susan and I asked to meet with her, and I met with her. And I respect Susan, and I told her that I respect her, and I told her that I had to do what I had to do because of my child. And I wanted to see my daughter walk across stage, because 4 days after graduation, she left for basic training. So, I respect her, and any person that I have opposition with, I respect that person, and I have no problem saying how I feel and how I'm going to move forward with how I feel. But I will always, always show respect towards opposition, and I welcome those conversations.
Actually, I was on the board in 2019. I was one of the ones that opposed what was going on because my son was also graduating. So I was on the side of the opposition at that time also. Another one for me would have been when we did away with the early separation agreement. I voted not to do away with the early separation agreement. I was in the minority. I think it was 5-2. I think Scott Hawes was the other one that voted against getting away from it. I didn't want to get away from it because at that time I wanted a plan in place. I think you have to have something in place because our teachers still needed something at the end. You know, there were a lot of people that were counting on or had counted on, right or wrong, had counted on that money at the end of their career. And I wanted something in place, and that's still going on. And I trust Susan and I trust the committee that is looking at incentives when people retire. You know, I tell this one story. 6 years ago, I was in an administrative meeting in Troy, and I'm going to tell you something. If you're a teacher and you never have the opportunity to go to another school district and see how it's done, you need to go. You need to do it. Because it can be very different. It can be enlightening. You can learn so many other things. But I was sitting in a meeting. I have a very dear friend down there, and I told him, I said, Charlie, I'm having trouble breathing. And he said, is it your heart? And I said, I don't know. I don't have any pain anywhere. He said, I'm taking you to the hospital. He thinks he's in charge of everything. And so he scooped me up, took me to the hospital, and I had pulmonary embolisms in both lungs. I had deep vein thrombosis, blood clots in my leg. I was transported to a hospital, and I came out of it fine. But I remember on the way back home, I told my wife, I said, I tell you what, from now on, I'm going to tell everybody exactly how I feel, and I don't care if they like it or not. And she said, oh my God, Blaine, I don't know if I can live through that. You already do that most of the time. And I said, I know, but there'll be times when I sugarcoat things, and I can't do that anymore. I need to be able to stand alone on certain things and do certain things. So standing alone, that's not a problem.
You know, if you disagree as a board member with the superintendent, I think it's important to be able to do a little listening. I've been around long enough to have done listening and change my mind about things. And sometimes people you talk to change their mind too. So I think you have to understand the reasons behind the decisions on which you might disagree. And sometimes people, I've been in a lot of boards over the course of time, and one of the important things about a board is to be able to disagree without being disagreeable, and also to wind up listening to each other's opinions and keeping an open mind about things, because there may be things you don't know or perspectives you haven't considered. So that being said, you know, there are oftentimes when I have opinions that have been at odds with other members in different boards. If you have everybody of the same opinion in the board all the time, that means nobody's really thinking. Nobody's really weighing in really, because they're all just going with the flow. And sometimes that's happened on some boards I've been on, where you have the tail wagging the dog. You know, you have somebody who's just telling you what to think and to do. But an example of that might be, during the COVID back early on, the recommendations were coming out from the CDC and some other entities about masks and about vaccinations and all those things. And so, having been in medicine for 30 years, I look back quickly at all the research data before everything got kind of strange on the internet about being able to search things. And I looked at all the data for masking and all these things for the last 50 years. And so I realized that there wasn't anything that really supported that really of any significance. And so policies came out, then the vaccines came out. Initially, I was like, we got this silver bullet that's going to kill this thing. And it became quickly apparent that that wasn't the case. And then you saw the VAERS data, which was going crazy. I'm like, man, we need to think about this for a minute. And then the organization I work for made a policy where everybody's got to take it as they were forced to, basically by the CDC and by the CMS service, before they wouldn't get paid from governmental payers. And so they left an option for religious exemption. And so many people, and the nurses, were filing for religious exemption. And then the organization I work for wound up saying, okay, we'll grant you exemption, but we're not going to give you an accommodation to be able to work. So you're all going to be terminated if you're in direct patient care very quickly. I'd already had COVID early on. I worked the front lines in all the clinics that were in the middle of that, because all the old guys were scared, and I was young enough to show up for work every day. And so, I got it early on before they had a vaccination. I'm like, I'm not sure I need it. It was like a bad cold, and I got over it fine. And I'm not sure I'm going to take that vaccination, because it had some other issues I had some moral concerns about. And so I was in the category of people that weren't going to go to work anymore. So I'm like, okay, we'll see what happens. But during the course of that conversation, I'm also on a lot of the boards of the organization, committees for decision making and all that stuff. And so I had a chance to weigh in on some of those conversations and present data and plead the case and argue about some of the other considerations for some of the long-term employees they were going to lose. And eventually, at the end of the day, they reversed what their edict had been, which was, hey, as of this date, you're all not going to have a job. And after that, they wanted to accept those exemptions and making accommodations. And so that was a great success story. I had some meetings with some people that were interested in it, and I was very thankful. It could have gone either way, but in that situation, it wound up resulting in about 1,300 people keeping their jobs and existing and everything. So I was very thankful about that. But during the course of that, let's see, I got trained in the Missouri Board of Healing Arts. I was trying to have my license revoked. I got letters from nasty lefty attorneys in our area threatening me with lawsuits because I'm going to kill people, All kinds of things were going on. I had people who don't see me or speak to me to this day about it. because I was advocating some of the things. And now, as of the last week, maybe you guys saw that they had a huge meta-analysis, looks like Matt's going to do a thing. Maybe you saw also that they had a huge publication in The Lancet that natural immunity is actually superior at least, and probably more enduring than the vaccinations. And they're just starting now to talk about some of the harms that the vaccine causes in some ways. And so it's kind of funny. I'm not expecting an apology from anybody, but I just smile and look at that. I won't get one. I thought about sending that to some of the people that trained me. But you know, it's interesting. So I don't have trouble standing on my own.
Thank you. Stacy, you want to take this one? Who is more influential in a student's education? The Missouri School Board Association, the local school board, the administration, or the parents? And how can we better balance those influences to be incorporated into the district policies?
I think public education's under fire right now in this state and in others. And I think it's really important that our parents make their voices heard, as well as our teachers, our administrators. It's a fragile system right now. Things are going before the Senate and whatnot in Missouri. They can make a big change. And influential, I think it takes a village. It takes a village. I mean, think about some of the policies we pass, that are passed with the school board. Some of the policies we are made to adhere to by the state of Missouri, the Missouri School Board. I think locally, the biggest influence are the parents, and our local teachers and administrators have the biggest influence on our kids. As educators, I think we have to try to do what's best for our kids and work around whatever you're given. And that's what it comes down to. Try to have the best influence to give your kids the best education possible. And so I would say probably the locals have the biggest influence.
Okay, so number one is the parents. The parents are going to have the most influence when it comes to their students' education. As far as the school board, administration, and teachers, it's just kind of a triangle, but at the top of the triangle is definitely going to be the school board, because they're the ones that are creating the policies and to having the administration implement to the teachers. And so I think that triangle kind of goes together with the school board being at the top. As far as the Missouri School Board Association, they're an association, an outside entity that pretty much just gives suggestions on what they think is going to be best for your district. Honestly, I don't believe in that. They do not create laws, and so I think that they're just that. They're just giving their suggestions on how we should run our district, and I think that we elect our school board to run our district and create those policies for our administration to then implement onto our teachers. But as I've said, number one, parents.
You're not asking me to rank those. You're just saying, no. It's very simple. The parents have the most important part and play the most important part in a child's life. They are the absolute most influential part of a child's life. If they're not there, you'll see kids that will not succeed. If they are there, like my parents were there, I consider myself a success, not because I have money, because I don't, but I consider myself because I'm a kind person, and I've done a lot of good things within this community, and that's what success is. Parents are the number one most influential entity in our district.
All right.
Can you read that one more time? There's a second part to that, I think.
Yeah, the second part was how can the board better balance these influences?
Okay.
Can I answer that second part?
How can, say that again, because I didn't even remember the second part.
Okay,
Say that again. Oh,
How can
it's
the,
getting late, it's past my bedtime.
I know, we've got to wrap up. How can the board better balance these influences or encourage the parents in,
Availability, flexibility, being able to listen, being able to involve, getting into the community. You know, the one thing that I pride myself in is that I am in all aspects of our community. When I was a principal, I felt like if I needed to go out to the most expensive home in all of Hannibal and have dinner, I could do that. If I needed to go to the least expensive home in Hannibal, I could do that. But that was because I was involved in our community as a board member.
Awesome. So, you know, the parents have the vast lion's share of the ability to influence their children. They got a lot more access, they've got a lot more credibility, and if, you know, the kids go through year to year and change teachers, but the parents are there if they're good parents, right? Now, you got some kids here, though, that really don't have parents that are really participating very well in the educational process, and that's probably an increased number from when I was a kid by a significant geometric percentile. So that's an issue, and so the school system's having to come alongside these kids and try to find some way to support them, and it's kind of like, you know, hierarchy of needs. You know, if you're not able to get enough food, you don't have enough you know, warmth in your house, enough heat, and the power's been shut off, and you're not worried about whether somebody's going to get in a fight or, you know, what's going to happen with these spending that car or something like that. And it's very difficult to show up at school and pay attention to what's going on because it's completely irrelevant to your present existence. And so for some kids, the school becomes the safe haven for them, honestly. So, you know, the schools have to take on that kind of role, and so recognizing that and recognizing the importance of that stability in some kids' lives is I think going to be even more important going forward. So kind of it's a mixed bag, you know, depending on the kid you're talking about. And so as far as trying to help the board and to look at that, I think we're going to have to do some outside of the box thinking for some of these things. I think sometimes there are some community organizations and entities that would be good partners to include and bring into the school. There have been some integration of some of the social services with the school district, and some of that's been successful, some of it's been problematic in some other ways, you know, that we don't want to go into tonight, but finding some creative ways to partner with our local community resources, some of the people that are willing to lend a hand to some of these other kids, and find ways to make that little safety net broaden a little bit and be a little stronger. I'd say would be a great thing to do. Finding some policies and some ways to wind up opening the district up to some potentially faith-based organizations, small, not be a terrible thing to do. We've done that some through the mentoring programs and things too, but I think there's a good opportunity for that in the days to come.
I definitely believe that it is building the strong relationships with the families. I want to give an example. 8 years ago, I got this young man on my caseload. I used to start off, they used to hire youth, and about 4 years in, then they told us we had to take both. And I said, well, I signed up for youth. And I said, if they grow up under me, I'll keep them. Then I know them. And so, but anyway, this kid had been getting in lots of trouble at school and been in the rubber room a lot, hitting the teachers and acting out. But at the same time, they didn't know that at that time mom was selling drugs. And she was going through a divorce, and she was trying to get away from that lifestyle, and she didn't want her kids to grow up that way. And as she went through the divorce, one day she calls me and she's frantic, and she's telling me that her ex had canceled their Medicaid. So therefore she couldn't get her bipolar medicine, her kids couldn't get their ADHD medicine, and her kids were getting in lots of trouble at school and everything. And so she wanted me to come pick her up. I didn't realize at the time if they weren't on my caseload that I wasn't supposed to pick them up. And I picked his sister up and the mom. So I'm taking them out, and I'm trying to get them the help they need to get them back on the Medicaid. And she's up here, you know, screaming one moment, telling me all the stuff. And, I'm trying to do the stuff that they're teaching me to, repeat what they say, to let them know that you're interested. And she said, no, if you just shut the F up and listen. I was like, yes, ma'am, I can do that. And now her kids are sitting behind me, listening, watching to see how I react to the situation. And I said, yes, ma'am, I can. And I just listened to her and let her keep ranting because she was just trying to get out of her system because she wasn't in her right mind anyway. I was able to get them back on track. But the kids, from watching all that and through building that relationship, I still have them, the daughter ended up on my caseload for a small amount of time. I was able to discharge her successfully. And the son, we're still working on it, but he's doing rather well. But they do develop a lot of respect for you. When they know that you love you show respect and love for the family, and you're trying to see that you're helping, and actually that mother now works for Preferred. She started 6 months ago, and she's come a long ways because she went and put herself through school and stuff, and I helped her get moving, and she was talking in front of everyone, and she goes, this lady kept pushing me away, but she goes, I kept pushing her away, but she just kept coming at me and stuff. And sometimes you just got to do that to help people, and sometimes and they want good things for their kids. They want to see their kids to do the right things, even though that they've made bad choices. And when they get to the point where they want to change, then you're able to help them, And then I've had other situations where the parents, they weren't involved and they ended up having to leave. I'm okay.
I see, okay.
I've already done
You did that one, all right. So
So it
maybe
goes-
Anna, you can we'll do a speed round here so that we can do kind of a wrap up.
Speed round.
Just a very short snippet. 3 years.
In 3 years from now, tell them what will be better since you're going to be on the board.
Communication, that's my main reason for, being on the board and what I want to help bring. Communication, you'll hear what's going on.
Parent involvement and achievement.
Hope to shore up what we have, build on that. A lot of changes coming for the district, potential change in superintendent coming up next year too. Potentially, you wind up having the school choice, they're one Senate session and House session away from school choice being voted in Missouri. Potentially that happens, that is a whole big game changer. The public school system is going to have to be a lot more competitive. You have the flight of all the best and brightest out into private education. And so we got to wind up making some options and really shoring up what we got, strengthening it, and really finding ways to include people as a partner so everybody feels ownership in the school district. I look forward to that in the next 3 years.
I'd like to see transparency. I do want to see more communication. I kind of feel like the board they allow certain people to talk. And I've never seen such a quiet board anyway. I've met around here, in other districts I've been in, it was kind of a back way, and I've never seen where you had to get approval to be able to speak or to share something or maybe even give ideas and stuff. They were talking about discipline one day, and I was thinking, oh, I got an idea, and we should start listening to other people's ideas too, that other people have solutions too, not just you.
I'm very proud of our board and what they've done in the past. Are there things they can improve on? Sure. If you can't improve, then where are you? What would I bring to it? I think I'm very pragmatic. I try to engage common sense before acting. I believe in our parents, our students. I believe in our teachers, their administration. I believe in this district, but I think I can be a very settling, experienced addition to this school board.
All right, let's give them all a hand. And sit up here for an hour and a half. Some pictures, and really appreciate, you all have done terrific listening and sorry we couldn't get to some of the other questions tonight, but it's getting a little late. I'm sure that if you personally want to have a burning question, they'll be happy to answer it after this. So we'll let everybody be dismissed at this point.